Hello, I'm Mr. Malden, and this is the Math Toolbox, where I teach you how to become a middle school math master. Today we are looking at solving equations. Really specifically, we're just addressing moving variables to one side, which means that we've got equations kind of like this one right here, 4x plus 2 equals 2x plus 1. We've got equations where you have a variable on both sides of the equation, and so we're just trying to get all the variables to one side. So we're not completely solving out the equations in this video. If you're looking for a video on solving one-step equations or two-step equations, you can look through my history of videos to find that. You can search that. You can be able to find those videos there. But today, again, like I said, we're just worried about moving variables from one side to the other, all right? Which means we need to have a little bit of preliminary understanding of equations. First of all, equations are just statements that the values of two mathematical expressions are equivalent, all right? They're equal to each other, signified by an equal sign, all right? Which means that equations have two sides to them, all right? And each side, all right, has an expression on it. An expression is just a math sentence without an equal sign. So 2x right here, that's an expression. It's just saying a number x multiplied by 2. That's a math expression, and we call it an expression because it doesn't have an equal sign. All right? It becomes an equation when we add the equal sign and an expression on the other side. Now, 8 doesn't look like much of an expression, but it is an expression, all right? It is just a value of 8, all right? So when we're saying here, when we add the equal sign, we have two expressions on either side. Now we have an equation, all right? And the second kind of thing that we kind of need to understand is equations by nature have balance, and we need to maintain that balance, all right? So you can see this equation, 2x equals 8. A lot of times when we first start talking about equations, we talk about this concept of a weight balance, all right? By nature of it being an equation, having an equal sign, we're saying that this side is equally balanced with the other side, all right? So I could put the 2x on this side and the 8, and we're saying they weigh the same, all right? They weigh the same. And it's essential that we must keep the balance. So there is balance already, as signified by the equal sign. And whatever we do when we're working with an equation, we have to keep balance. So that means if I add 1 to this side, I've got to add 1 to the other side in order for there to be balance, all right? Which means whatever we do to one side of the equation, we have to do the same exact thing to the other side. And the way that I kind of teach my kids to give themselves a mental or a visual reminder of that is I have them just draw a line right down the equal sign all the way down, so it just helps us know there are two sides to this equation. All right? And when I go to this variable and I start working with it to try to get it by itself, because ultimately we're solving equations, which means we want to know what the x equals or the y or whatever the variable is. That's the objective when we're solving equations, is to find out what the variable equals. So whatever I do on this side mathematically, I have to do on this side as well. So the math that I'm doing over here is to get the variable by itself, but if I do the math here, I have to do the math there because I want to maintain balance, all right? One more preliminary kind of thing that we need to discuss is pulling in our knowledge of the additive inverse property. If you remember the math properties, you know that additive inverse is one of those. If you need a video about that, you can search my videos as well. I've got a whole video on all the different properties of operations. But additive inverse is a really important one when we're coming to solving equations. The multiplicative inverse is as well. But today specifically, we really need to kind of key in on this additive inverse, which says that two opposites add up to 0. All right. In order to get 0 as a sum, you have to add two opposites. All right. So you've got, in this case right here, the number that we add to, if we add 7 plus -7, those two are opposite numbers. All right. Opposites are negative or positive counterparts. That answer is going to be 0. all right? Or if we have negative 5x plus positive 5x, that's going to be 0. Or if we have this situation right here, what number do I have to add to 8y in order to make 0? I've got to add its opposite, which is negative 8y. We're really going to want to key into that concept, all right, to the additive inverse property and the concept of making 0, all right? So you'll hear me kind of use that terminology quite a bit. How do we make 0 in this kind of situation, all right? And the answer is by doing the inverse, all right, doing the additive inverse. All right. So let's kind of get into the steps then for solving equations and find out kind of where we are in this video. The first step in solving equations, so you can see a pretty complex equation up here. Well, it's not that hard, but it is pretty complex. You've got some exponents, you've got positives, negatives, multiply, divide, subtract, all that kind of stuff. There's no division, sorry. Addition, multiplication, subtraction. But you got a lot going on. So there is a process, all right? I call this an elephant of a problem. And how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. So you're going to take it step by step. Well, the first step to solving equations is to simplify the expressions on both sides of the equation. And we spent a lot of time in the first part of the year, the first quarter, the first 9 weeks, really just focusing just on that, simplifying those expressions. So if you need some help on that, you can find all sorts of videos about simplifying expressions in my history as well. All right. That's the first step. Then the second step of solving equations is the nature of this video, or the subject of this video, is to move all the variables to one side. Third step, we're going to get the variable by itself by doing some different math to undo the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And then finally, you check your solution. But again, today, we're really just concerned with moving all the variables with their coefficients to one side. So let's just kind of start getting into this. We've got a problem right here. You know what? I'm going to just step back real quick, and I'm going to take that same example that I had earlier in the video. We've got 4x plus 2 equals 2x plus 1, and we're just going to use that one and use these other videos kind of as example videos, or sorry, these other slides as example slides, these examples. All right. So we've got 4x plus 2 equals 2x plus 1, all right? And I ultimately want to get all of these variables onto one side. Or to say it another way, I want to get rid of the variables on one side. Now then, that means we have to pick, all right? And ultimately, there's no wrong answer. You can pick either side. It's just going to be that picking one side might be a little bit more helpful than picking the other side. Now, saying that, we also do have preference. In our world, we typically like the variables to be on the left side, all right? We ultimately want to know x equals what number, all right? So we're going to fill in this blank. We want to know what x equals, all right? So that means that, generally speaking, if we have variables on both sides, we kind of want to do the work on the right side to get rid of the variables so that we get them all to the left side. So that's my MO. That's my, that's how I operate, is I always kind of think in terms of trying to get rid of the variables on the right side and getting them to the left side, all right? So that in mind, we're going to go ahead and put a line down our equation just like this to help us know we have two sides of the equation. There's balance here, and we need to maintain that balance. So whatever I do over here, I'm also going to have to do over here, all right? So I'm looking at this side right here, and I see that there is 2x that I want to get rid of. So I want to think about this, all right? Ultimately, I'm going to want to make 0 out of these 2x's so that I can add that 0 to the 1 that's present. So ultimately, all I have left over here on this side is going to be 1. That's, my objective is to get rid of these 2x's, all right? So in getting rid of them or undoing it, I have to think about, how do I make it go away? How do I make it become 0 in a mathematical kind of way? All right, is there a number that I can add to 2x that would be 0? And it's opposite. That's the answer is the number that I add to 2x to get 0 is the opposite of 2x, which is a negative 2x. All right? So 2x plus negative 2x is going to be 0, and 0 plus 1 is going to equal 1. Well, now I've done some work to this side, all right, which means I need to do the same exact thing to the other side. So I'm going to add negative 2x to this side. And notice I put it right underneath my other x's right here, because that's ultimately what we're working with. We're working with the x's, so we need to work with the like terms. So I'm going to work with the x's up there as well. All right, 4x plus negative 2x is going to be a positive 2x, all right? Because I'm adding a positive plus a negative, which means there's a war between those numbers. So we subtract the numbers, we keep the sign of the larger number, we have 2x. And then I want to keep this plus 2 as well, all right? I want to bring that down. This plus 2 is just going to come on down because I haven't done anything with it. All right, so in order to get rid of the variables on one side and move them to the other side, I just had to make 0 out of the x's that I had, or the variables that I had on the right side. All right. Now, a lot of teachers teach it as the inverse operation, and I think that's a really good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. That's a great method. All right. So if your teacher teaches you inverse operation, they're doing the right thing. All right. Which is just doing the opposite. If we have 2 x's, okay, in order to get rid of that, we have to subtract 2 x's. Well, that's the same exact thing as adding a negative, all right? And the only reason I teach this right here is to try to lock into this idea of making 0, because later on, students, they start seeing examples that kind of trip them up a little bit. And if you can lock into this idea of the additive inverse, then it's really going to help your mathematical understanding, all right? You're just undoing, all right? You're getting rid of 2x. The way to get rid of that is by adding its opposite. All right. Now then, let's see if we can try some of these, which you see the example right there on your board. All right, so let's try that one. You've got 18x minus 4 equals 4x plus 24. If you're new to my channel, the way that I like to operate here is I like to give you examples like this to try on your own. All right, so I recommend right now, pause the video and try the problem yourself, all right, and then come back and see if you've got the answer right. Okay, so if you haven't paused already, you want to go ahead and pause that, try it on your own scratch sheet of paper, and then come back to get the answer, because I'm going to go ahead and share that now. All right, you've got 18x minus 4 equals 4x plus 24. All right, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line down my equation right in the middle. And then on the right side, I see variables, and on the left side, I see variables. So I need to make sure, I need to go through the step of getting rid of the variables on one side. I'm going to pick the right side. I'm going to get rid of the variables on the right side, and I'm ultimately going to move them to the left side. All right? So I've got this 4x right here, which means I need to get rid of it. I'm going to keep this plus 24 later on. But I need to make 0 out of that 4x. All right? I need to get rid of it in a mathematical kind of way. All right? So to make 0, I'm going to add the opposite of 4x, which is negative 4x. 4x plus negative 4x equals 0, and 0 plus 24 is 24. Now the plus 24, where I got that, it was just from the original expression right up here. Just brought that down because I didn't do anything with the constant. I'm only working with the variable. All right, now I did it on one side, so I've also got to do it on the other side, just like that. And I'm very careful to write it exactly the same way. All right, if I add negative 4x here, I need to add negative 4x over there, all right? Which, by the way, is the same thing as subtracting, right? There we go. There's the slide for us over here, all right? 4x plus negative 4x is the same thing as saying 4x minus 4x, all right? So there we go. We're just taking 18 minus 4x. We're going to come up with 14x. And then don't forget your subtract 4. Bring that on down. Right? So we've got 14x minus 4 on this side. And on this side, we ultimately had 24. All right? So just simplifying this equation, all right, or going through the steps of solving this equation, we're just in step number 2. All right? Just moving the variables to the left side or to the other side. We had to subtract 4x from both sides, and we came up with 14x minus 4 equals 24. All right? you try this one. So go ahead and pause this and then come back and get some understanding. Or if you want to, I'll kind of talk you through it while we're kind of going through this one, because this is a little bit different, all right? This is saying, if you can't see the problem, there it is right there. 9K minus 49, so take this chance to write it down, all right, equals 50 minus 2K, all right? Now then, here we go. We're going to draw a line right down the middle, right? And we're going to think about this side over here. We see k's on both sides. We see that both expressions on both sides of the equation are already simplified. So step one of solving equations is already done with this one, all right? We just need to get the variables to one side, all right? So get rid of them on one side. Well, I have 50 minus 2k, all right? The inverse operation, if your teacher teaches you that, and it kind of comes in handy right here. What's happening right here is we're subtracting 2k, so the opposite of that would be to add 2k, all right? Well, I'm going to go back and, which is what we want to do ultimately, but I'm going to go back and kind of like pull this out just a little bit more, all right? If you're new to me, then, or if you're not new to me, you know that I like to turn all my subtractions to addition problems by applying keep, change, opposite. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to this one, just so that you can see that that subtraction really influences the next number to be negative, all right? That's the way I kind of describe it to my students is we've got this subtraction, we've got to understand that it's attached to the next number, all right? And the way that you can kind of visually see that is to apply keep, change your subtraction to addition, and then when you do that, you have to follow that up by turning the next number to its opposite. So we're going to apply keep, change, opposite to this to make it an addition problem. And that helps us see we have a negative 2k right there, all right? So we've got 50 plus negative 2k, and now I'm thinking about, okay, on this side, I want to make 0 out of those negative 2k's. So what do I have to add to this in order to make 0? I have to add its opposite, right? And the opposite of negative 2k is positive 2k. So I'm going to add the opposite. That's going to make these cancel out, and ultimately all I'll have left over on that side is 50, because 50 plus 0 is 50, right? And then on this side, because I added 2k here, I need to add 2k there, all right? Just like that. So 9k plus 2k is going to be 11k, right? We're going to keep our subtract 49. So on this side we have 11k minus 49, and on the other side we have 50. So when we kind of like solve this equation or go through the second step of moving the variables over, this is the answer that we get. Now this is not completely solved out, and that's not the nature of this video. This video is just all about getting the variables to the other side. All right, you try this one. That one right there. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can try this one and come back and get the answer. All right, hopefully you've paused it already. Okay, again, you want to draw a line right down your equation, all right, to show that you have two sides. Now on the right side, you had 32 plus 5y, all right, and I want to make 0 out of the y's, okay? So in order to do that, I've got to add 5y to both sides, all right? 5y plus negative 5y is going to be just 32, all right, because that's going to become 0, and 0 plus 32 is 32. And so I'm going to have to add the negative on the other side as well. Now, you hear me saying add negative, and on the board I have subtract. That's because adding a negative is the same thing as subtraction, all right? So let me spell it out on the board the way that I kind of talking about it out loud, all right? I've got 7y minus 38 equals 32 plus 5y, all right? I want to get rid of the 5y on this side, so I have to understand how am I going to make 0 out of that, all right? The way that I'm going to make 0 is by adding a negative 5y. It's opposite, which means I've got to do the same thing over there, all right? Just like that. 5y minus 5y or plus negative 5y is 0, and 0 plus 32 is 32 on that side. And on this side, 7y plus negative 5y is 2y minus 38 on this side, and that's going to be equal to 32, just like that. All right, one last one, and we are done. You've got 2x plus 25 equals negative 3x plus 620. Go ahead and pause this video, see if you can do it yourself, and come back to see if you got the right answer. Right? We're going to put a line down the middle of our equation, helping us know there's two different sides. Whatever the math we do on one side, we've got to do on the other side. Right? I want to make 0 out of negative 3x. So the way that I make 0 out of that is to add 3x. Right? So I'm going to add 3x on that side. And 3x plus negative 3x is 0. And 0 plus 620 is just 620. So I had to add 3x on this side, which means I have to do the same thing on the other side to maintain the balance. And 2x's plus 3x's equal 5x's, all right? And we don't want to forget about our plus 25. We're going to go ahead and bring that on down. All right. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about it, any comments, you can put those in the comments down below. And look out for the other videos, one-step equations and two-step equations. Those are coming, but by the time you watch this video, they're probably already going to be up, and you'll see those inside the history. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.